Hello, I'm Lucy and I like to draw. And part of drawing I always get stuck on, even after years of experience, is when faced with this blank white page, where do I start and what do I do? I work as an artist with Inside Out Comedy at the moment, so I thought I would show you how I get around this problem. Now, the first thing I'd like to talk about is the pencils themselves. Now, there's always a choice of 100 pencils, and I've never been quite sure why. It's a bit like knives and forks at a dinner party. Which one do I use and what order do I use it in? And so I've made my own sort of guide as to how I approach these pencils. There's a few basic rules, and if you look along the side of the pencil, there's often wording followed by some lettering, in this case HB. Here's another example. Maker's name, again a HB. If you start to look at other pencils, they might have different writing on them. So this one has got a 3B. Another is a 2B. A 4B. And so the numbers change. Now if you Google it, or if you want to look it up, you're very interested in pencils, there is a whole history of them and the whole museum's dedicated to them. But basically, the ones that have H on them are a harder pencil, so H for harder. The ones that have B's on them tend to be softer pencils. And by softer, they're more smudgy, they make a darker line. If I can demonstrate by using this one, for instance, is a 9B, which is a very heavy pencil, very soft and heavy. You can make a nice dark line with it. This darkness of line can be used in a different way to something like the HB, which only has quite a light line. Doesn't matter how hard you press, it will stay quite light. So they're making a different mark. Again, to go back to my favourite, which is a 2B, this makes a quite dark line, not as dark as the 9, and not as smudgy either. So I tend to use a 2B for most of my drawing. But anything will do, a HB or a 2B, anything in that range is absolutely fine. It all comes down to how you draw and what marks you want to make. So if I was drawing a precise map or a house building, I would use a hard pencil, the HB or the harder ones, because they give you a sharp line. But if I'm drawing trees or bushes, I might use a soft pencil, so it gives you a nice, soft, gentle, smudgy line, which suits living things maybe more than buildings. But most of it is about your own personal preference. And the only way you can find out which pencil you like is by using a pencil and using it on your paper and finding out what marks it makes and what pleases you and what doesn't please you. As for how much you'd spend on a pencil, start with the bog standard, middle range price. You can't really go wrong with a pencil in that sense. But if you find your pencil is not making any mark, or it's too light or too faint, then increase the B reading or increase the money you're spending on that pencil. The cheaper the pencil, the less mark it tends to make. So now for the second problem. Here is the white space of your piece of paper. Where do you start? What do you do? And for myself, I use some exercises or some warming up exercises just to get myself thinking about drawing. I don't think about what I'm going to draw. I don't think about how it's going to go or where it's going to go. It's just a warm up. It's just like doing sit-ups or jogging. And for the first exercise, which I'm going to call number 1, and I put a number in there just to remind myself that that's what I'm doing, an exercise. I'm going to time myself for a minute. Hopefully I can count for 60 in my head. And all I want to do in that minute is scribble. And whilst I'm scribbling with my favourite 2B pencil, my only ambition is within that minute I need to visit all of that paper. I might be jaggy, or I might be curly, deeper and darker, dark bits, I might be light. By the time that minute is up, nice light sketch in there. That paper should be full. And that goes straight in the bin, or if you're very keen about recycling, you can use the other side. Exercise number 2. Now on this one, again I'm giving myself a minute. You can use an egg timer, or you can use your watch or a clock or whatever you can, or you can just imagine a minute. But at least at the beginning, do time yourself, because you'd be surprised at how long a minute is. Exercise 2. Take your pencil for a walk. Now, whereas on the first one I was scribbling, on this one I'm controlling where my pencil goes. And I'm going to take it for a walk. But again, my aim is the same. The paper must be covered by the end of the minute. Including the table. Sometimes I add a rule that I'm not allowed to take my pencil off the paper. But I must visit as many parts of that paper as I can. In a controlled, drawing the line, taking it for a walk around the lamppost, into the garden, down the road, across the road, into the house. Constantly thinking about taking that pencil for a walk. The only barrier is the size of the paper I'm on. I can't leave the paper, I can't lift my pencil up. And someone somewhere should be counting to 60 seconds, or my timer going tick, tick, tick. If I'm feeling particularly like I need to exercise, I will time myself and then go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, pencil down. It has a bizarre effect. Because you know it's not never-ending, it's not open-ended, you're timing yourself and there is an end and there is an aim. It helps you to cover the paper. Try it. Exercise number 3. Now, my hand's quite large, so I think I might actually use a large piece of paper for this one, because what I'd like to do on exercise number 3, you can increase and go as big as you like. I put my hand in the middle, and again, I'm just going to draw around my hand, taking that pencil for a walk, but this time I'm using my hand as a starting point. I'm blocking out parts of the paper with the thing that's always with me, my hand. There's my hand. Often bigger than I think it is. And then for the remainder of the, you can give yourself as long as you like, but I like to give myself another minute. I'm now going to colour and scribble and take a pencil for everything outside of the handprint. I'm not allowed to make any marks inside the handprint, just on the outside. And you could use colours if you want to use colours. You could do patterns if you want to do patterns. You can make regular shapes or irregular shapes. There are no rules about this. Let your pencil and your hand just work together. Put what you want in where you want it. Maybe you want to put stripes. Maybe you want to put circles. Put anything you like on it, as long as you do not touch that space inside where your hand was placed before. Now all of this, coloured in space, patterned space, this is all the space around the object. It's not the object itself, which is the hand. It's the space around the object, the space that's left. And once you start to see it in those terms, positive space and negative space, you can start to think of how you're going to place things in your drawing. So that this time, when you bring in your blank piece of paper, it's not one big plane of blank, it's a plane that's going to have object and behind object. It's going to start taking its own shape. But I explain that further in the next video.